Hey there, and welcome to this next video in the overview that I'm giving to the Human Sexuality Report here for Sunny Slope Church. We're looking at some of the issues and the topics that pertain to the Christian Reformed Church, Christian Reformed denomination, and what the CRC is doing with the Human Sexuality Report and all the implications that might have. In the last video that I made, I walked you through the report that first came out in 1973. And that was a report that challenged the Christian Reformed Church to embrace those who experience same-sex attraction by making a distinction between behavior and orientation. And I said in the last video that that was a pretty significant challenge or change for the Christian Reformed Church, because up until that time, the CRC had not thought through a whole lot about how to minister to people who experience same-sex attraction. And so 1973 represented a pretty significant moment. What I want to do in this video is kind of walk you through what's happened since that time. And so I want to take us through some of the key moments in the Christian Reformed Church that have unfolded, that have kind of brought us to where we are today. Now, there is a lot that we could say about what has all taken place. We can go into a lot of detail, but I really want to focus just on a few what I think are pivotal events in the history in the last, say, 50 years of our denomination. And I want to look a little bit at what each of those are. So the fallout from 1973 was there was not wide, well, not say not widespread, but there was not unanimous approval and acceptance of what the denomination said. If you read through the letters to the editor in the Banner, which is the official magazine of the Christian Reformed Church, you can read through different perspectives and different opinions on the question of homosexuality. Some felt that the 1973 report was too tolerant and too accepting, and others felt that it didn't do enough to embrace people who experience same-sex attraction. And so there was still a fair bit of disagreement within the broader church as to how the Christian Reformed Church should approach the question of human sexuality, and how the Christian Reformed Church should embrace or not embrace people who experience same-sex attraction. This went on for about 30 years. There was discussion, and there were various, online, not online, but public discussions in the letters to the editor page of the Banner. By the mid 1990s, there was a decision to form a new study committee on the topic, and so a synodical report was put together in the late 90s that was finally brought to synod in 2002. This report was attempting to lay out a more pastoral approach to that would instruct and guide churches on how to provide pastoral care for people in their churches, in the congregations, and in the community who are experiencing same-sex attraction. In other words, if the 1973 report focused mainly on a theology of human sexuality, and it focused mainly on explaining our position, the 2002 report did more with practical things. How do you, if you've got a member of your family who is same-sex attracted, what should you do about that? Do you have him and his husband over or his spouse over for Christmas dinner? Those kinds of questions. How do you actually provide pastoral care? So that was in 2002. At that same time, there was something that was happening in Toronto, and this happened over the course of about 4 years. But essentially, there was a church in Toronto, Ontario, in Canada, that was ordaining a person and intended to ordain a person who was in a same-sex relationship to the office of, I believe it was to the office of a deacon. Well, I might be wrong on that, but I think it was to the office of a deacon. And when word got out about this, there was quite a controversy about this, and this went back and forth to synod, and for about 4 years, synod was debating and discussing what to do with this. There were overtures that were trying to depose the entire council of First Toronto, which means to remove them all from office. There were efforts to try to discipline the church. The classis was asked to discipline and then to take action. And long story short, what happened was the council of First Church in Toronto decided to step back from what they planned to do, and they agreed to bring their practice in line with the denominational position. What this whole 4-year controversy did was it put the issue back into the forefront of the life of the denomination. And there were, again, and it sort of was a reminder that this is an issue that continues, and it's an issue that is that the church is still wrestling with, and it served as something probably for more conservative churches. It served as a warning that this issue was bound to show up again. By 2011, at the Synod of 2011, the Synod was asked to form a study committee on human sexuality. So this would have been the third study committee in about 40 years. And at that time, Synod declined to do that. Synod essentially said, we're not going to form a study committee because we already have a theological position on this. And Synod decided not to revisit that theological position because they felt that it was, at the time, they felt that it was orthodox, and there was no need to open that up to revision. There was a fear there that going down that road would lead to a change of the historical position of the Christian Reformed Church in ways that were not biblical or not orthodox. And so Synod decided not to form that committee, and as a response to that, there was a group of individuals loosely organized in West Michigan that began to meet together to discuss and to essentially to promote the idea that same-sex relations can be a valid choice for people who desire to follow Christ. This group became known as the All One Body group. They began meeting in early 2011, and at first it was a fairly loosely organized group, and over time it gained more structure, and it came to be more organized. And they would hold events in different churches. They would hold educational events, and they would hold open forums and that sort of thing. And that has continued to the present. More recently, there has been another group on the conservative side, which is promoting in a similar way as All One Body. They are promoting an orthodox viewpoint on human sexuality, and that group is called the Abide Project. And so essentially you've had these two differing sort of grassroots groups that have been organized, each of them promoting a differing approach to human sexuality. The All One Body group is promoting the idea that we as Christians are all one body, whether we're same sex or gay or straight, and it's acceptable to practice same-sex activity, even if you're a Christian. And the Abide Project is taking the approach that we must abide in God's word. That's where they get the name of that from. And so, it's been an interesting thing. It's, as these two groups have emerged, and they've both gathered momentum in promoting their respective points of view. In 2015, the request, a new request came back to Synod, and that was again to form a study committee on human sexuality. And what was different this time was that this committee was asked to study not just homosexuality, but a wide range of sexuality, a wide range of issues that pertain to sexuality. So cohabitation, pornography, polyamory, all of these unique challenges that have been facing the churches since, really since the first report was written in 1973. And Synod actually agreed to form this committee. That was formed in 2015, 2016. It was given a 4-year mandate or a 4-year time window, and that means it was supposed to have reported to Synod of 20. Well, it's supposed to. Their report was due out in, I believe, in November of 2020, and the idea was that those reports then get circulated and they get shared around all the different churches. And churches and classes then have a chance to respond. And then it would have gone to Synod of 2021. And that would have meant that Synod of 2021, when Synod gets together, they would have had to have considered the recommendations of this report, and they would have had to make recommendations. Well, 2021 came along and Synod was postponed due to the COVID pandemic. And so that sort of brings us to today. The report is going to be brought before Synod of 2022 that meets in June of this year. So, but we'll come to more of that later, but that's just kind of the history. Now, all along the way, there has been, there have been these kind of undercurrents as well. And by that, I mean, these are not so much events as they are sort of, what should we say? Attitudes and postures within the CRC experiences of those who are same-sex attracted. One of the themes that emerges is that as a whole, many people have felt that the Christian Reformed Church has failed to live up to her ideals. In other words, when Synod of 1973 said that you have to learn to embrace and care for people who experience same-sex attraction, that you can do this without condoning their behavior, but you still need to show Christ-like love and support and care. That was the ideal, but in many cases that was not lived out. There were many cases in which people have shared that actually they felt alienated, they felt excluded on the basis of their sexual orientation. And so there are stories and there are accounts of people walking away from the church, walking away from the faith, being hurt by their experiences in the Christian Reformed Church. And so the church has actually struggled to embody and to live out their beliefs and their practices. Now, at the same time, you have to look at the broader cultural picture. What has happened since 1973? How has our culture changed? And I put up just a few pictures here, just really as sort of representative pictures. We know that I think it was 2015, I might be getting my date wrong, but anyways, the same-sex marriage was legalized in the United States. Now that it happened in Canada much earlier. It happened, I think, in 2002 in Canada, but same-sex marriage was legalized, and that means that what was once considered something off limits and the church didn't really have to deal with, now the church has to deal with this in a new way, because culture, the Supreme Court said that it is within the rights of people who are same-sex attracted, within the rights of gay people to be married. And so questions come up about that. Does the church have to participate in that? What happens to a church if it declines to perform a wedding ceremony? So that has happened. The widespread acceptance of same-sex marriage, that has become just so prevalent in our culture, as well as transgenderism. So increasingly the idea of what it means to be transgender and recognition of gender fluidity and gender dysphoria, and all of these questions have been raised as well. What does the church do with the person, and how does the church think about gender and sex in in a world that says that you are free to define your own gender. You're free to be whatever gender you choose. What does the church say about that? Polyamory, that's the picture there on the bottom. There was an increasing number of people who believe that as long as everybody's all on board and as long as there's transparency, then it's perfectly acceptable to be married to or to be in a relationship with multiple people all at the same time. And that is becoming an increasingly popular practice. So what does the church say to this? And then what about couples who live together? Even within the church, it's increasingly common for couples who are not married to be living together before they get married. What does the church do about that? Does the church just go along with that? Should the church oppose that? What does the church say about all of these things? So these are some of the issues that are becoming very prevalent in the mainstream culture, and you can add on top of that any number of things, pornography and other sexual sins and sexual behaviors that are becoming increasingly common. So what does the church do about all of this? And so the report in 2000 that was commissioned in 2015 that was going to be brought to Synod of 2021 and now 2022 is meant to answer some of these questions. In a nutshell, I think this is what it boils down to. What does it look like for the church to follow Jesus in the area of human sexuality? Now, that's kind of a broad way to put it, but essentially, I think that's what this is really all about. How does the church remain faithful to her calling to serve and honor and obey Jesus Christ in all areas that relate to human sexuality? How do we speak prophetically into the world? How does the church call her people to holiness and obedience? And yet, how do we do that in a way that reflects the character of Jesus? So that's where the church has been. That's where the church has gone, and this is the question that the church continues to wrestle with, and that's what precipitated the report that came out in late 2020. Now, I'm going to stop the video here, and then next video, I'm going to give you a little bit of a broader history. I'm going to give you some of the other things that have been going on within the church. I'm going to focus on a couple of other specific issues that have come up, and we'll get to those in a little bit. So, thanks for watching. Again, check out the other videos in this series and subscribe, because there's going to be more videos coming. I'm going to put them out about once a week. So you're going to want to follow along, and hopefully this will give you some insight into what's been happening and what the future might look like. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.